Hey, everybody, welcome to Cars with Cocktails, a show where Charles and I, aka the home mechanic, talk about cars, stuff, and drink stuff. And this week, again, we're drinking beer because cocktails are hard.
I feel like there's a already we're coming off with the dirty jokes right out of the kettle. I don't know if that's the right
Yeah.
saying, but yes, indeed, we are drinking beers. Some beers. I am drinking a Highland Brewing Daycation IPA out of the fine meth-filled town of Asheville, North Carolina. Weirdly, even with the meth, maybe one of my favorite places. Very cool town. I also have a backup of Westbrook Brewing, Three Claw. I think this is an older IPA, so it's probably going to taste kind of trashy. But yeah, I know you're definitely not drinking a similar beer to me because I forget how you put it. Something about IPAs tasting the same as things taste when you lick someone's ball sack or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. I believe someone really enjoyed the comment. So what refreshed my memory is someone left a comment about my angry badger asshole. uh,
That's what it was. So it wasn't about you licking
uh,
ball sacks. It was a
uh,
angry badger thing. Got it.
Yeah, I it could be a ball sack though. I think it's a fair reference. I'm drinking a classic Yingling lager, if you will. If you could take a look right here, you'll
Yeah.
see the Yingling lager, which I didn't know for a long time. Apparently, Yingling is not really available in a good portion of the country.
Yeah, it's beer distribution is just the weirdest thing ever. But Yingling is primarily a East Coast or an East Coast thing. Also, if I recall correctly, America's oldest brewery. And during Prohibition, I want to say they made ice cream to keep the doors open. I'm sure they sold a shit ton of beer too, which is pretty wicked cool. But this is not the Charles Knows a Very Tiny Schmeg of about beer podcast. This is the Charles Knows Absolutely Dick Off All about cars podcast. So what the hell are we talking about today anyway?
Today we're talking about how do customers actually get screwed by, I guess, by shops in general. I think we could pretty much leave that under the umbrella of all shops.
Right.
But
Yeah, this is I what I like about this is that I think we can come out of the gate right off and say yes, people do get screwed by shops, body shop, repair shop, machine shop, whatever other kind of shop there is, right? Yes, they do. Um, and I think you and I have both said it a million times. Like the industry has earned its reputation for being shitty often. However, what I think the more interesting conversation to have is diving a little deeper into, is it someone actually getting screwed? Or is it more of a perception that they got screwed? And let's face it, right? Nobody on the planet, unless your brain is wired upside down, enjoys going to the shop and spending money on their car. Even if you're doing cool guy Johnny race car shit, if you didn't have to pay for it, you wouldn't. So nobody likes that shit.
yeah, so what inspired this was there was something I had made a video I made on TikTok about somebody who was talking about basically insurance fraud that body shops were doing. Um, excuse me, the
Ear
Yingling,
burps already.
the
3
Yingling,
sips in, and
yeah.
he's already burp.
uh the gentleman, there's a gentleman who owns a body shop who is in the my comment section who was very upset with me, and it inspired this, which we should all be able to admit that there are people in our industry who are not doing right by people. I think that applies to literally every industry that exists at all. There are people who do the right thing, and there are people who regardless of whether right or wrong, they're always choosing the best financial option for them. And oftentimes, as everybody will do, you know, oftentimes doing what's the right thing is financially detrimental to you.
Yeah, and I would sort of temper that with in the short term,
Mm,
it definitely
for
definitely
sure.
can be, right? I mean, look, I feel like most shops are actually good. They want to do a good job. You know, I'd kind of busted that dude's balls because one of two reasons that guy got mad talking about insurance fraud. And you know, if you want to go kind of a little deeper into what you were talking about, I think that's pretty relevant and get paints a pretty good picture. But um, I had said like, yeah, he's probably one of these guys committing insurance frogs.
Mhm.
And boy, I haven't had but like 3 sips of this, and I'm already not speaking well or good or gooder. Um, but if you're, I feel like really the only time a shop gets upset that people say this shit is because they're the type of shop that does the exact thing that you're talking about, right? They're the shop that sells a customer an oil leak repair, throws the gasket in the bottom of the toolbox, cleans it off, and ships the customer down the road. And as far as I'm concerned, if there's a technician doing that, it might as well be the fucking owner of the company doing it, right? It doesn't matter at which level the fuckery is occurring because it's happening at any level, it's happening at all levels.
Correct. And I think well, I mean, let's get into specifically what I was talking about in that was about the most common version of insurance fraud I've seen was basically body shops who buy things, sheet metal parts like frame rails. They tell the insurance company that they replaced the frame rail when they just yanked it and fixed it and rolled the car out. That's the most common version I've seen, and there's really no other explanation for returning a frame rail when you bought it to fix the car. You know, like there's really no like, oh, ha, just kidding. We didn't need this. Yeah, like
we knew the frame was bent, but nah. Yeah. And the problem in there lies is that the spotty shop has defrauded the insurance company because they have charged the insurance company for parts, a markup on parts, most likely, and labor to replace the frame rail or whatever it is. And they just mashed it up with a hammer. And then now what they're going to do is they're going to take that frame part and they're going to try and return it to get their money back to even more fraud the fraud. So it's like fraud on fraud on fraud. It's fucked up,
yeah,
is really
it's
what it is.
yeah. So that you know, again, it wasn't that common, but it was very specific. Body shops would do it more often. You would see it more often, and eventually, you know, as somebody who was a parts manager, I would cut that shit off at the knees. And usually, people like that would just stop buying from me. I wasn't really big into the body business in general, but because they would not be able to get away with doing that stuff, and so they would just stop buying and go buy from somebody who would let them do it. Um, that I didn't play that shit. And mostly because I didn't like that aspect of that. I knew that's what was going on. Um, you know, but the other part of it is, and this is something that that girl didn't really. This was my video was kind of a adding on to a girl who talked about it of people buying parts, body shops buying all the parts from the dealer, then returning all of them and using aftermarket stuff or whatever. That I would say is rare, and there is a legitimate time that that does happen because if a car gets totaled out as it gets, because I don't know how much you know the process. You probably haven't interacted with it too many times. Obviously, coming from the parts side, I have seen enough of it. But a lot of times, what'll happen is they'll do an entire order for a car to fix it, and then once they start to tear apart the car, they get to a place where they recognize it's a total loss, and then they have to try to return, you know, $5,000 worth of parts or whatever, you know, whatever,
Yeah,
some
yeah,
pieces or
I have seen that a handful of times, and boy, talk about a way to get under the skin of a parts counter person is to have a body shop
yeah.
do some
Oh
shit
yeah.
like that. But I get it. Like it's you know, I don't want to say it's not their fault, but I mean, damn, if you've worked on any number of cars, you know that there's a lot of times where you go into a job expecting it to be this and you get, you know, an engine apart or something like that and you find out, holy crap, there's way more wrong with it than we expected. Insurance, this has happened to me. This exact thing has happened to me, even though we didn't do body work. You know, if somebody hits a curb and there's no body or paint damage, but it's destroyed the suspension, like it's a reasonable thing where you don't know how deep it is until you're in there. I'm just looking at this little tab on my computer, tabbing up the number of gigabytes. This thing, it's at 8 gigabytes already, and I don't know what's going on. Anyway, or let's say a customer hits an oil pan and the technician quotes an oil pan. I think I've told this story before. Gets the oil pan put on, goes to crank the car, and the engine's seized or making all kinds of racket or some crazy shit like that. So there are places where this is like not ideal, but it's understandable, and in no way like an attempt to commit insurance fraud. Where what you're talking about, like that's way like that shop should be fined to the point where they maybe don't need to be
Well,
repairing any
technically
cars.
it's illegal. It's insurance fraud. But interesting fact you talked about, which I think at the beginning is something really probably good to talk about at the lead of this, is perception. As a shop, and I'm gonna tell you this really interesting story. This happened to me. My sister had a car. She brought it to a shop. This is before we had a shop, and her husband had a Trailblazer. They brought it in to a guy to do an oil change on it and look over it before they were taking some kind of road trip. They took the road trip. They came back, and then after that, somebody drove it to the airport. I don't remember who it is. They were driving to the airport, started to overheat. They overheated it until it eventually blew the head gasket, and then it needed an engine. And uh, they posited in a very aggressive fashion that the shop screwed them and should have told them that something was wrong. Now, they later at some point came to me to talk to me about this, and I tried to discuss with them, hey, they don't have a fucking crystal ball.
Right.
Them looking over your car to say, "Hey, looks all good," doesn't mean nothing can ever happen with your car. It means it currently looks good. Now, was there a sign of something happening beforehand? Obviously, I don't have a time machine to know whether that's the case or not, but it seems unlikely, and definitely when you drive your car overheating until it blows the fucking engine, like, that's not their fault that you did that
No,
stupid shit. So,
no.
and both my sister and my mother they I don't even, to this day, I'm not sure if I discussed it with them if they would believe what I said. And I'm just like, if me, somebody who's in the industry, can't convince my own family members who are being unreasonable from a third party, I have no no benefit, no skin in the game to defend them. If I can't convince them, it gets real hard to convince a complete stranger who you're asking to pay you a lot of money.
Yeah, I totally, I like to use this analogy with tires for people because it's something that, if you own a car for any length of time, you're going to get tires put on it, right? And so you could bring your car into the shop, you get 4 new tires on it. They're fresh, they're the best cool guy tires, perfect. You get in your car, you pay your, $700 or whatever for your tires, you do the alignment because that's what you're supposed to do as well. You jump in that car, you drive home. Everybody's happy. They feel good, man. Fucking new tires are just, it's great, great feeling. You wake up the next morning and you have a flat. Okay. You don't, nobody, well, most not, I won't say nobody, but the average car owner and driver, the first thing they're going to think is, what the hell? I just spent $700 on tires and now I got a flat. And what they're going to do is they're going to pick up that phone and they're going to call yelling. What they don't realize is that at any point in time, from the second that car hit the ground after getting tires till you parked it, you could have ran over a nail. You could have ran over a thumbtack. You could have ran over, I don't know, whatever the hell else, a power drill, right? You could run over anything. And that could have put a hole in that tire. It's not the shop's fault. You know what? I'm going to even say it's probably not your fault as the owner because look, sometimes you hit shit and you can't avoid it, right? It's just the universe said, fuck your tire. I'm going to put something through it. And now you got a flat. What happens is the shop, they're like, well, you hit something probably in a less than sympathetic way than maybe they should be because the customer's pissed, right? But the universe just said, nah, you're going to get a fucking nail in your tire and it's going to suck. It's nobody's fault. It sucks, but it is what it is. And I think oftentimes part of the problem is one, shops forget that customers aren't technicians. They're not us, right? You and I live in this fucking industry. So when someone says, I did this big repair on the car and the next day the car blew up, you're like, yeah, well, that shit happens. Yeah, okay. Um, we forget that that customer only remembers that they just spent $700 on tires. They're not thinking, I could have picked up a nail on the way home, this or that, right? They're not thinking in that way. And the industry has done a good job of giving customers all the ammunition to feel that way too, because as likely of a case that customer picked up a nail and got a flat that way, the technician putting the tires on didn't fucking seat the bead all the way or left the Schrader valve loose or didn't set the tire pressure to begin with. Now Captain Blinky, the tire pressure light is on, and it is their fault. So it really does go both ways. And we get so out of our we lose so much touch with that customer and realizing that, there's a saying that perception is reality. And I don't think people really understand that that is fact. Like your perception of something is your reality. That's just it. If you and I were sitting in the same room looking at this can of beer, we are going to perceive it in a different way. The way I perceive it is my reality. The way you perceive it is your reality. And the fucked up part is we're
It just
both
tastes
right.
like it tastes like shit no matter what.
And the fucked up part is Paul's gonna hate it, right? I sometimes get into this like weird meta shit. Like there are essentially infinite versions of every person that exists, right? Because every person that you've ever met in your entire life has a different perception of you than you do, and that every other person does too. It's like mama, my mom thinks I'm handsome, kind of thing, but
Yeah,
nobody else does.
yeah,
That's it. That
yeah.
it is exactly that.
Yes. No, I 100% agree. And that's one thing as a business owner, the one thing I try to get people out of, especially our people who deal with customers, but even our warehouse guys too, because it's often good to see it from the other perspective. Is when a mistake gets made, to prevent minimizing it is to put them in their shoes, and especially because they're car guys, it's easy to do. Is because if this happened to you and you were trying to get ready for X kind of show or event or whatever else, and you were counting on this thing, like how would you have felt if that circumstance had happened to you? And the same thing with our people on the phone. I try to make sure that we are communicating as much empathy as possible. And I can tell you 99% of every person who's ever been pissed at us, well, maybe not 99, but 95%, let's say, everybody who's ever been pissed at us is because it's only because of perceived communication problems of they think something happened that wasn't happening. And that's their perception. Now that's on us to try to make sure we're doing our part to do our best. And then sometimes that means we can every every version of that is more or less reasonable in terms of the ability to make that happen. But certainly a lot of times I think I put the onus on us to say we should have done a better job of communicating um, our situation to people. So, and that also involves trust, because that's the other part of um, the benefit, the blessing, and the curse of being out there the way that I am as a business owner, is that I'm an accessible person. And I'm sure you've seen there's always these runaway freight train Facebook threads that happen. Uh, it doesn't really happen to us, but it does happen to other people in our
Yeah.
industry.
There's a
Um,
whole group or something about that. Just fun. I
um,
totally thought of that group at some point during while you were
uh,
talking. Look, here's a perfect example, right? Where it's so easy to get out of having any type of sympathy or empathy. I guess empathy is the right word for someone in a certain situation. And I've heard technicians, and I've said the same thing, just this dumbass shit before, like you got a problem with a car or a customer's upset or whatever, and you say this dumbass phrase that I like. Again, I've said this myself. I don't give a shit. My car starts and I'm going to drive home, right? You completely remove yourself from the fact that the person that is mad that their car is not done is relying on that car because they got to get to work the next day or whatever fucking scenario that can even exist. And being able to, as a technician, as a shop, whatever, to take yourself and put yourself in that customer's shoes and look at it from their point of view is huge. It, one, humbles you and centers you very, very quickly to go, look, this customer needs your help. They don't want to fucking pay for it. They're paying for it because they can't do it. Something in their life is preventing them to do it. If they could do it, they wouldn't be paying your ass to do it. So you get off your high and mighty fucking high horse there, Johnny Big Dick, and realize that that customer is paying your bills. So cool with the fucking attitude, and understand, like, you can be a hero in this case.
uh,
You can win the day.
you
You
know,
can
it's
be the yeah go rah rah as long as you communicate properly. Which flat out, dude. I mean, the biggest problem in the automotive industry is fucking lackluster. Doesn't even really do how shitty it is communication.
but I don't even think it's automotive industry. I think it's humans are bad at communication, especially like I think I've gotten better at it over time. I'm sure you've gotten better over time. It's something that generally I think comes from experience. But the thing that actually triggered in my head while you were talking about that was I think the reason, and this is something that tends to be what I've seen with my own employees, oftentimes the feeling of not getting taken care of properly often comes from the person being being offended that the person thinks they're not doing anything. Or I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it because I don't feel like that's accurately communicating what I'm getting at. It's like you don't understand what I'm dealing with. I'm trying to help you, but you don't really understand what I'm dealing with to try to help you. And that's a lot of times that's part of what creates like a lot of tension. And obviously the biggest thing is like people got to get over that. But I think that's a normal thing that people have is that they immediately defend their actions because I'm trying to do the thing for you. Now, sometimes they are and sometimes they're not. But
Well, so it goes like through the whole process, right? And I like to use kind of like the tire analogy. I like to use how we generally approach a customer with a check engine light, right? From a service advisor standpoint, customer calls and says, "Hey, my check engine light's on." Advisor's like, "Okay, cool. Like, bring it in Catil's Day or whatever," right? So, customer brings the car in, and what does the bulk of service advisors say when the customer brings the car in? This phrase pisses me the fuck off, by the way. So I'm going to drop some mad heat on this one. Now that I said it, it's probably not going to be mad heat at all. So customer brings a car in, check engine light on. Here you go. Here's my keys. And the service advisor says just one of the most boner terms, phrases you could ever say is, "All right, I'll have the technician pull it in real quick and we'll hook it up to the scan tool and let you know what's wrong with it." Well, talk about an advisor completely fucking devaluing what a good technician does. But now the customer has this perception of all they're going to do is they're going to plug the car into this computer thingy, and the computer thingy is going to say, "All right, put a canoodler valve on it," which, I mean, sometimes I guess it's that simple, but that's rarely the case that it is legit. The computer says, "Hey, put this part on." So Because of that, if there's something extra that comes up, the customer thinks, well, all they got to do is plug it back into the computer and that's going to tell them what's wrong. Why should I have to pay them $100 to plug it into the computer when I can go to this other place and they'll tell me what's wrong with it? They'll plug it in for free. And then I get a list and I can replace the airflow meter and the oxygen sensor and my car is fixed, right? We've devalued what the technician has done and what the technician does. We have given this customer the expectation that we're just going to plug it in and that's all that we do. So the customer doesn't understand why they should have to pay $90, $100 or whatever. And we have totally fucked up the interaction with the customer. Whereas if we take a different approach, and I honestly think like as shops and as technicians and advisors, we need to be the ones to put this on our shoulders and not rely on our customers to communicate better with us, right? We're the professionals.
Oh,
This is
100%.
on us.
Yeah.
And to expect that from your customer is just asinine and waiting for you to get this super level of disappointment. But if we start communicating the true value and the true thing of what we do as a shop, what we do as technicians and advisors and shop managers and except shop foremans, they don't do shit. Then we very slowly begin to help our customers understand our side. And fucking believe it or not, if we can begin down that path and have a customer that understands what we're doing and that legit, we're trying to help you, the whole transaction, the whole transaction is going to be better. Everybody's experience is going to be better. And fuck off, you might actually fix a damn car.
Yeah. So part of the reason why I started doing the TikTok stuff the way I did was because I wanted to show people the diagnostic process. Obviously, I'm not diagnosing the cars, but I do go through the diagnostic process that's happening on the things we're doing so people can understand. And you know, it's funny because I feel like it's one of those things that we all want people to know, hey, fixing cars is way harder than just plugging in the scan tool. But there's no way to say that and actually get to any fucking audience of any kind. Like I actually may probably eventually make some kind of like meme video of like what people think fixing cars is like versus what it's actually like. But the reality is that I think most people have no clue what it's like, and most people do have the perception that you just plug it in, it just tells you, and it's like, oh, okay, I know what's wrong. Yeah, that's it. And obviously, that's not how anything with fixing cars works, almost at all. And there's some rare exceptions, maybe dealerships, because you see the same year range of cars with
Yep.
similar equipment, so you see more frequent pattern failures. But even us, as a shop that specializes in Volkswagen Audi, like because the year ranges we see are so much wider, like we don't see the same exact like we know the car as well, so we know what to do and we know what the diag and whatever. And so a diag from us is gonna, we've had multiple cars where people, threw their hands up and told people they couldn't help them, and then they ran to us and we diagnosed it. But you know, the problem I think is that perception is always a thing that people think, and I don't know if we're ever going to overcome that.
I don't know that we will either. In fact, I would probably go out on a limb and say that there will never be a time where that perceived notion of I'm going to go to the shop and I'm going to get screwed. They're just going to plug it in and they're charging me all this money that I shouldn't be paying. I don't think that's ever going to go away. Which is fine, I guess. I mean, I would obviously prefer it not to be that way, but it doesn't matter what I think. But as a shop, I think you can start trending with your customers and your customer base better by doing a better job communicating. There was something that you had mentioned earlier. Now I forget with, it's your sister and the thing like, so while you were saying that and how like they didn't find anything, there's also the other side of that where they do find stuff where the customer comes in, chest all puffed up, just do what I brought it in for. And I don't want to know anything else that's wrong with it. I'll take it
Right.
to my mechanic. Why the fuck are you here?
Right.
Is usually what I think on that one. But we as the industry have just done such a great job of preparing customers to get fucked instead of like breaking it down for them. People aren't stupid. Some people are stupid. Most people aren't stupid. And if you have a like reasonably intelligent conversation with them, you don't need to bust it out at an engineering level about how CAN bus works to have a conversation with a customer and explain to them why it's going to take 2.5 hours to diagnose their CAN bus issue. You can simplify it and
Well,
still not talk down to them like
y-
they're stupid.
yes, but two problems you have there. I think two industry problems, right? And again, if you if you feel like this doesn't apply to you, it probably doesn't. But two things: one, about half of service advisors are incapable of even understanding it because they don't try to and they don't want to actually understand it to explain it properly. And then two, about half of technicians are incapable of speaking to other humans in a way that
God bless, that's true. Man,
so
I tell you.
without sticking their foot in their mouth by saying something uh, that's not particularly bright or the right thing to say in this circumstance. And so those two dovetail together, leave kind of a bad circumstances that because about let's say about half of advisors are pretty good, or at least solid advisors, right? They're they want to do a good job, they're capable, whatever, and they're not out there actively screwing people over. They're doing their job, and in varying degrees of how well they do it, but whatever. And about half technicians can speak with customers. Some of them great, some of them okay, some of them not great. But and then the other half are completely incapable. They're going to say something uh like, it's complicated, you wouldn't understand, probably because they don't understand it well enough to explain it, because
Sorry,
they've
Mrs.
embarrassed.
Jones, you're too stupid to know what I'm talking about.
Right, right, exactly. So so that's, I think, a big part of our problem is that there's too much between the half and the half. You combine those two halves together, that probably overlaps to 75% when you pair them together. So that only leaves 25% of people who even have a chance of communicating properly.
Yeah, it sucks and I hate it. And this is one reason why I don't necessarily think like every technician should do some time as an advisor and vice versa. But I really do think there needs to be a certain level of cross training. That might not even really be the right word. So that a technician can understand, like, yeah, you give your advisor shit all day long for not selling work, but you also don't see the other bullshit that they deal with. And advisor, you think that technicians just got their feet up out of their toolbox, sticking off all day. You don't understand the full breadth of what they do either. And maybe then the answer is, or at least the beginning part of the solution is to take in house and truly develop your shop, advisors, technicians, service managers, whatever, as a place where not only is communication encouraged, but you teach people how to do it. Because you said it earlier, like, people don't know how the hell to do it. They're not just going to magically fucking learn it. Take some time and teach them how to do it. And I think the better
Well,
job we do with an internal communication, that shows itself to customers. You can end up doing a better job for your customers, and everybody becomes happier in the whole entire situation. Because look, we so far of all the stuff we talked about, that's just one part of it. We haven't even talked about the fucking dollar figure aspect of perception yet either. So buckle up for that one.
yeah. Well, the other part of that to that whole thing of what you just said is that it also requires good management, which managing people
Yeah.
is often difficult. And as anybody who has ever uh, managed people, there's often this often perception in business is that people think they should be a manager if they've been doing the job the longest, or they're good at the job, if they're the best person at the job in that place. But that often falls so short of the skill set required that there needs to be some sort of uh, calibration with the idea that managing people also means being able to be good at communication, understanding communication with people, understanding how to properly manage people, and a million other things, which that in and of itself is its own fucking conversation about the the management side of that stuff. So, because oftentimes people, I coming both of us come from the dealer world. Dealers generally manage based on dollars and cents, and so that often falls pretty short in a lot of these other places.
Well, not only that, I think the studies that have been done find that most people that end up getting promoted, oftentimes getting promoted, when they kind of stop getting promoted, that's actually one level higher than they really should be. So if you're in a company of 5 and you're 5 and you get promoted to 3, you probably really would have been a much better number 4 person than a number 3 person. And I have witnessed that. I'm sure that's been me at some point too, because oftentimes that promotion doesn't come with any training for the next level that you. It's like, you don't suck shit, so we're going to promote you to a manager because you come in every day and you have a pulse and you don't. Um, anyway, I won't tell you what was going through my head. You don't show your wiener. You don't show your wiener to customers when they come through the door, right? That was what I was thinking. So you're going to be a good manager, but
That was a pandemic going on apparently where you
oh, what the fuck happened there? But yeah, like it's a struggle, and it's a struggle to look. Also, to be fair to dealerships and shops and whatnot, like oftentimes there's not enough hours in the day to truly
100%.
put a focus on it unless you force that to have enough hours in the day, right? It's not a priority because us learning about better communication doesn't get this car fixed and
Nope.
this customer taken care of. So
Mm-mm.
I totally get it, but I really wish that we could shift that focus just a little bit, right? It's like steering a barge. If we just bump it along a little bit, we'll eventually get there. And it's not something that, even if we flip the fucking switch and all shops started to be perfect tomorrow, which clearly is not real, the overall effect of the last 50 years of shops doing the shady shit that some shops do is not going to go away. And if you're upset of all the shit that we've said, then one, I think this is what I said at the beginning, you're either doing that shit and fuck you, I don't care what you think, or you know that we're right and you're mad because you have to deal with the bullshit that other shops create for you too.
Well, yeah, I think the problem is, I think the other reason, and that body shop guy, I think the real reason why he's mad is because he feels implicated. He feels like he's an accomplice to a crime that he never committed. And I think if you're kind of a dope and you're not very bright, that's the way you think. Is like, mm, okay, like I'm being implicated in this thing, and I didn't do anything wrong, and I do everything right, and whatever. And maybe he does. I have no judgment. I don't fucking know the guy from Adam. Um, so so perfectly likely could be doing everything great. The But if you feel implicated in something, you should be more honest with yourself and recognize, okay, hey, this isn't me, but this does happen and other people
Yep.
do it. It would be a much like us denying that there are shops that screw people over. And the reality is that we've seen all these news reports, and we've known dirtbag guys in our own careers as well. But you've seen
Yep.
these news reports where they go to bring their car in for a trans service, they record the entire thing from a secret camera, and they never even drain the transmission. Like they put it up on a rack.
Yeah. It's not like they took it and had the oil change in their Passat and they drained the transmission and double filled the
Wow.
oil. At least they damn did something there. Yeah, I hate that the industry has to deal with what it has to deal with. I think a lot of shops that complain about nitpicky bullshit don't work as hard as they should overall to overcome whatever the customer's perception is. Um, and a
Well, it's a
lot of times
different
just
world.
they create their own problems. They don't
I
create their own problems. They make the already existing problem
worse.
worse
Yeah.
or not any better, which is might as well be the same thing.
The problem is, and this is just my perspective on it, I think ultimately the skill sets required to properly not just communicate with customers, because I think that's one thing, and I think that's a whole different problem. I mean, God, like our fucking engine, our
Oh my god.
our machine shop that we're dealing
Oh
with
my god.
for our upcoming project is a perfect example of a business that, yes, they made a mistake and they owned up to it, which is great. You know, like they're not dirtbags, but they also have done zero communication with us. And over the month or plus they've had the engine, every contact that's been has been on us. So and
Yeah.
that's something that, as somebody who owns a shop, I try to make sure that they're on top of people as much as possible. As on our parts side, whenever we have big delays, we try to update people. But at the same time, and I'm not even going to pretend like this isn't the case, as we've had our growing pains as a business, that hasn't always been easy for us. We've kind of gone through times where it's just like hard to have the bandwidth to properly do all the communication you need to, and we struggle with it. You know, like I'm
Yeah.
not going to pretend like that's not the case. So that's hard, but I think ultimately the skill set required to have the transparency that I think is required to really earn trust the way that you or I would, that's just not a skill set I think most people have.
Yeah. We've both seen it, and it's not to say that person's a bad person or they're not overall good at their job.
Could be the
Uh,
best
uh,
tech, could be a way better tech than I could ever be, you know, like,
yeah, for
but the
sure.
reality is that the perception ends up being a different thing regardless of what the truth is. And I'm not gonna, you know, obviously you and I, we're not out here pretending like we're super tech, but uh but we've earned trust with people because we say shit. And we say what we think, whether or not sometimes we make mistakes, sometimes we say the wrong things, sometimes whatever, but we're out there saying stuff, and we're saying everything to the best of our ability. And that's really what I think earns people trust, and which is, yeah, again, easier said than done.
Yeah, it's again all the shit that we've said. It's not necessarily easy, but what it is it's very very simple. Very simple does not mean easy. And
The
the
fuck people
other,
over parts, that's easy. That's easy. It's easy to not fuck people over. So that
yeah,
actually
well, yeah, like
the perceived,
shockingly, it's easy.
well, uh, I can tell you, as somebody, we had a shop semi local to us that I don't know all the details about it, but roughly, shop was open for a while. They were taking on a bunch of work. They'd done a bunch of stuff. They had a lot of big projects of cars going on, and it fell apart. And there was no money at the end, and all these people had prepaid for all kinds of stuff because
Ugh.
they had big projects and whatever else. And it was a complete clusterfuck. Um, and I, in my opinion, I only tangentially knew the dude. He was at most an acquaintance of mine who owned the shop. Um, I think it was he just mismanaged it. He
Yeah,
mismanaged it so badly. He didn't realize how bad it was going until, until it was way too late. And and at that point the money was gone anyway. So it's not like
yeah.
he
It
ended up
already hit the
walking away.
iceberg, so
Right. Yeah, exactly. He was already the Titanic. That shit was sinking, and fucking Rose was on top of her lifeboat while Leo was just drowning in the ocean.
she couldn't just move her bitch ass over fucking six
I
inches
know.
to give him some room on the door. Come
What a
on,
selfish bitch. Yeah.
I tell
Yeah.
you. Yeah, and none of that, because there's another component too when you bring in the money factor, and I think that's oftentimes where the big problem comes in, is that people feel like they're just getting screwed, and they paid X dollars and got this done, and they don't realize that a lot of like most shops aren't just making shit up, right? There's some kind of guide, there's a labor book, there's a pricing guide. Maybe they paid $25 too much, maybe they paid $25 less. Um, off, this I think price alone is just such a deep fucking topic that
Oh
maybe it
God.
stands on its own. Um, but regardless of that, it's on the shoulders of the shop to communicate all that stuff properly. And if that starts to happen, customers can actually understand why a timing belt costs $1,000, instead of a shop saying, "Yep, it's $1,000," and then they jump on the Facebook group saying they're telling me it's $1,000, and Johnny fucking DIY race car boy is like, "I'll do it for $16," and
And a
people
half of
just,
a eaten bag of Jolly Ranchers.
yeah, people just, there's always more information. Whenever I see that shit, I rarely comment, but I do read the comments, and I'm just like, y'all are missing so much fucking information because you in Podunk fucking Tennessee have no concept of what it costs to
In
have your car
Hawaii.
worked on in the
Mhm.
fucking Bay Area of San Francisco,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
Your
exactly. Well,
$90 an hour labor rate in Bumblescum, Tennessee, that shit's three times more per hour. Three
yeah.
times, two times at least, probably three times more per
Almost 3
hour
times, yeah. Mhm.
than 250 an hour for labor rate is not abnormal
In big
in certain
cities,
parts of
in
the country.
places like Manhattan, the Bay Area, I would be shocked to hear it. I mean, God, you gotta think about, in the Bay Area, if you've never looked at what houses cost in the Bay Area, I know because we have to look at, like, different fraud stuff and stuff like that, and I'll look at an address based on certain things, as someone might send me an order that's triggered, that based on our criteria is triggered for fraud, and you'll see a house that's fucking 1,500 square feet, and it's $1.3 million, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What happened here? And yeah, and that's a variability in cost, and depending on where you live. So that, to me, that's actually not the thing that I think most people are concerned about, although I think people generally concerned about that. Is like, good example, and I think I may have mentioned this to you, I can't recall or not. We have a customer at the shop, had a car with a TSI engine. We were replacing it with a used engine. Engine
Oof.
had gone bad. Um, we put a used engine in it, running it on. We installed the engine, running it on the lift. It's idling for like maybe 15 minutes or so, um, and the engine locks up. And well, take that back. The engine stalls. We assume it's locked up. We're pull. It's hard. The crank won't turn. Problems, trying to figure out what's up. Obviously, our default is always like, okay, my thing is we put chains on the engine, obviously, as you should with any used TSI. Um, my assumption is, okay, we fucked up the chains. Let's take it apart, check the timing, look what's up. Well, we checked the timing. It's fine. We didn't do anything wrong. Check it, determine the trans actually locked up while it was idling on the
Oof.
lift. Now, how the fuck do you explain that to a customer? Like, and have them like, "Hey, Mr. Customer, you're in here for your engine. It's many thousands of dollars. Uh, while we were finishing up your engine, you were running it on your lift, and your transmission locked up, and now you need a transmission."
Yeah.
Like,
There's no win in that. And that, I think understanding that and just being straight up with the customer about it is like, what else do you do? You're in a win situation. Like, you're not going to come out looking good in this. So you might as well just be like,
right,
here's
right,
what
and
happened.
ultimately, right, and that's ultimately where we were at. And I ended up actually talking to that customer too, because obviously it kind of escalated a little bit. And it's rare that I ever talk with customers at the shop, but uh, what we ended up doing is splitting the cost with them. And
Yeah.
like,
I think
obviously,
that's fair.
I'm eating I'm eating all of the cost. When it's like, the customer's perspective is like, hey, I didn't do it. It's like, listen, we didn't do it either. Like,
Yeah.
we're we're just here fixing your car. It just happened. So stuff like that happens, and I think the hard part from the consumer's perspective is, when do you know that they're telling you the truth? And the problem with that is, from the perspective of our conversation going on right now, is you everything's situational, right? Is
Right.
is you and I can, if you tell me a story about something that happened, I can tell you that doesn't seem likely at all. I can't tell you it's not true, for sure, for sure. Damn Yingling.
Burp.
Yeah.
but on that same note, you could say that that doesn't sound likely. and you could tell me some shit that happened directly to you, and I'd be like, that doesn't sound right. But also go, yeah, that's also not surprising either. Like weird, weird shit happens sometimes. And some people just have that shit luck that the weird shit happens to you. And it's a shitty situation. And it's not like you guys are like, oh, finally, we're going to get one over on this customer and sell him a transmission, or we're going to drain his trans fluid and really, stick it to him. Fuck that customer. Bad shit happens. It's just like picking up that nail in the
Yeah.
tire right after you get new tires.
And something for people to understand, I know when I was a tech, the first thing like this that ever happened to me was was doing an oil change on a car, which I did quite a bit as a flat rate technician. Um, and the check engine light came on as I was pulling it out of the shop. And like, how do you explain that to somebody? Like, hey, we changed your oil, but now you have a check engine light.
Yeah. And now, so that's a great example, because there are times that shit's happened to me too, right?
Of
It's
course.
it's happened to every technician if you've worked on enough cars. And a lot of times it's like your your second key cycle was the one to trip the check engine light, right? The check
Right.
A lot of things need to see a failure twice with a key. This is the symbol for key. I guess I need to switch it to push button in today's world. But I've also had it where I've done an oil change and not plugged an airflow meter in on a FSI, or done an air filter or some dumb shit, or left the dipstick up, because you got to push it all the way down. So it can be either one. It can be just fucking bad luck. It can be, yeah, I straight like that one guy. I did an oil change on a common rail, and it was one of those like last minute at the end of the day things. So I'm like working real fast, hustle, hustle, get it done, pull the car out, get out of the car. And the customer standing there, he's like, hey man, there's something leaking from my car. And I turn around, I'm like, oh shit. I didn't tighten the oil filter all the way, so it pumped about
Mhm.
2 quarts of oil out of the engine. The worst part about that whole deal was cleaning the damn mess up and looking like a dipshit in front of the customer, but rightfully so, because I was doing actions in a manner into which you should call me a dipshit on. So
Yeah. I
it's
I certainly have done my share of those things too.
so how do we what advice can we give to people, right? I think we've talked about, like, for shops, like, what y'all need to do. But what about from a customer
Okay,
standpoint?
so here's the way I see it from a customer's perspective. A, try to only work with shops you trust, and oftentimes it requires in our world. Obviously, we are most knowledgeable in the VW and Audi world. I would suggest highly trying to find somebody who specializes in Volkswagen Audi. That
100%.
m- may
100%.
not be possible in your area, and if you're not, if you're, let's say, a BMW person or a Porsche person or whatever, I guarantee you somebody in your city, if you're in a reasonably metro market, somebody specializes in that shit. If not, you're not trying hard enough. Um, Find local enthusiast groups of that kind of car. Ask people where they get their car worked on. That's a great place. You're going to find good options based on that. Um, the other thing is, if people are trying to pressure you to make a decision right away, you should immediately not deal with them. That is something that I would say. Anybody who's pressuring you to make a decision and not allowing you to feel like you have any time to make the decision, you should question whether or not their motives are bad or not. Then the next thing is, if you don't trust them, and you should consider bringing your car to somebody else. Is if you're questioning whether they're doing right by you, uh, then bring it to somebody else and have a second opinion. And also at the same time, you can also shop other similar types of shops for the same type of work. Now, if anybody who's ever seen our videos around, I've done a handful of them, not many, where I call different dealerships around the country to show people the variance in price. Because something like what was it? Oh, the water pump, Mark 7 water pump, ranged, I think, from about 700 to about 1400, depending on where you are in the country.
Yeah, or what advisor you got that actually knew the right parts to quote.
That's it. Well, that
and
too.
and labor and stuff. But I think those are all really great things. here is the one thing I will add to that. You need to do all of this research before your fucking car is broken, because you're in a lot better situation to find a shop and a technician that you trust when you're getting an oil change versus when you got to find somewhere to have your car
Yeah,
towed because it's broken.
that's really good
Please, like,
advice.
I'm telling you guys, people spend more damn time researching their fucking cell phone case than they do finding someone to take care of their $30,000-$40,000 car. If it's the dealership, great. If it's the indie shop, great. If it's a VW Audi specialty shop, awesome. If it's a shop that works on everything, but they have a VW Audi tech, great. Obviously we're just using VW and Audi, but I can't, like, y'all, do not wait till your shit is already broken to start this process. As soon as you get your car, you need to find someone, because you might not need them this month, but how great is it going to feel when you're sitting on the side of the road and you go, boop, 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 boop. Let me call up Joe, not Johnny Race Car, Johnny Oil Dick, or whatever his name is. When you can call up Joe and go, hey, Joe, my car's broke down. I'm going to tow it over to y'all. Talk about an amazing feeling versus panic over trying to
Right.
figure out somewhere. That's how
Right.
you may not get screwed, but I almost guarantee you're going to feel like you got fucked.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Is use, and this is the thing that I think is good advice, for the fact that take advantage of, don't just use the oil change place that's the most convenient for you. Take it to a place, if it, and again, if you are not our customer, and you were, or let's say you are our customer and you decide to take your oil change somewhere else, I don't care, go for it. But what he's saying is good advice to shop for a shop that you can trust, not because they can change your oil better, but because it can give you confidence in the relationship you're going to build between them, and then allow you to kind of build that relationship and determine whether you think this is a good place to go or not. So I think that's awesome. I think it's really good advice.
Yeah, I hate to see people get in a panic situation over that kind of stuff, when an hour worth of research would have prevented all that. So please do
Yeah,
that research before before you gotta.
yeah,
I hate seeing people get taken advantage of, or I really also hate people feeling like they got taken advantage of when they didn't, and that's just, it cost what it costs, and that's totally normal. So
right. There's flip sides of that coin, but I think that advice, doing it beforehand, and especially on oil changes, allows you to. And if you're the type of person who maybe you want to take it in more than one time, or maybe you take it in one time, you determine that these are my guys, and then, or gals, and then you can go to Jiffy Lubes or wherever for you want. Like, maybe that's not generally what I would advise, but
I would
uh,
definitely not advise
um,
that
uh,
either.
but I think some places are probably fine like that, quick lube places. And if that's what you want to do, at least if you're looking for a place, you have a place to go.
Yeah, I feel like once you find that place, keep going there. They're going to know your car really well. They're going to be able to tell you with more certainty that, hey, this is coming up, than perhaps a shop that does everything, or a quick change place. The quick change places have their role, and I'm not hating on them at all. I've actually known some really sharp people that worked at those kind of places, but don't save $5 on an oil change. That $5 is going to be a good investment in your relationship. And also, don't be afraid to bring the guys and gals at the shop some cookies or beer or whatever. We all like that very, very much. So, yeah, please, 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 please do that research. Find your people.
Okay. Find your people. I think that's an episode.
Real quick, as we wrap up, how was your yingling dingling?
I mean, it's a Yingling. It is crisp and delicious, a timeless classic, as it would be from the oldest brewery in the nation, apparently. And how was your Badger's asshole?
Well, it's funny. I was going to make a comment about how Yingling tastes like fish tank water to me. My Badger asshole was both hoppy and floral.
That
Uh,
sounds like a
it
flowery
yeah,
asshole.
it was very, very much in the flowery asshole category. It was good. It was better than I expected it to be, actually. And a low ABV at only 4.9%, which I'm, a lot of people like to take the like, give me 12%. I actually like the low ABV shit. So yeah,
All right.
that's
Well,
how it was.
that is an episode. We drank some stuff. We talked about some stuff. Hopefully, we saved people a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.